Yes, hello everyone, and welcome to this session in HR's role in CSRD reporting and how to align sustainability goals with employee engagement. A lot of acronyms here in the title slide. HR, I guess everyone here in this room is familiar with what that is. CSRD, maybe if you join this session, you're at least familiar with the concept, or you're very curious about what is CSRD, and that we will come into a bit. But I think the main purpose of this session is actually in the subheader. It's about how we align sustainability goals with employee engagement. I hope you will find it valuable here in the next 30 minutes. So who am I who have the pleasure of speaking here today at People Success and the Future of Work? Well, I'm Carl Orling, and I'm a finance guy by trade, but really by nature, I'm a people person. So you could say that I'm where spreadsheets meet human potentials. My background is in finance. I've had a lot of different finance roles in companies like Alfa Laval and Pilkington and some smaller private equity based companies. But I started to really become more and more interested in sustainability and less interested in the last decimal on the gross margin. And then I kind of decided, well, let's move into sustainability full time, because that's where I have my passion. Still with the finance edge, I still believe that we need, as companies, make money from our businesses. If we don't have a cash flow, or if we have stranded assets on our balance sheet, our business health will not be that good, and then we cannot do good things to try to contribute to society and to the planet and to our people. So you could say my passion is to help companies drive a value-oriented sustainability agenda where sustainability is integrated in the strategy. And that's a bit about me, and enough about me, really. But I would like to hear from you guys on the call. There is a poll to the right here in to the right side of the screen, where we ask which statement best describes your organization's approach to sustainability. And I'm thinking if you could go out and answer that, let's get a feel for what we have here in the room. How mature are we? Three of you have already responded to this, so we can take a moment to respond to the survey. Well, that's great. So I think we have some sustainability pros here on the call. More than 50% so far really see sustainability as integrated into the business strategy already. And then we have a pack of beginners who try to cater for your needs as well. Some people that do what is required, and some people who want to transition from compliance. So I think it's a mixed pack, but good to see so many of you are already in a stage where sustainability is really integrated into the business strategy. That makes me very happy. So if we move on here, so my why in a more philosophical or bigger sense is that this is really a challenge that is facing humanity. We all remember COVID-19, when we felt that the world was falling apart, and then we started to wash our hands, and we started to get some hope from the vaccines, and we felt that working from home, not being able to see our loved ones when we felt like it, that was a really big challenge. And we felt that now the vaccines are here, now we can start to live again. And then comes all sorts of bad things, like the war in Ukraine. There was a recession, inflation, suddenly everything became really expensive, and economies slowing down, and that feels like it's a big wave also now with tariffs coming from the other side of the Atlantic, that really the economic environment is maybe an even more burdensome wave than COVID was in a way. Because there is no vaccine, we only have to trust like that there are sensible people who can guide us out of this. And unfortunately, like when we have these acute crises that we have to deal with, like COVID or recession, we know somewhere that if climate is changing, and we see it already, like I don't know how many of you have bought coffee. Coffee is one really high inflation good, and a lot of that is attributed to climate change, like because the harvests in Brazil are really poor. You cannot grow coffee on low altitude anymore. You have to move up to higher altitudes. You have to work with new variants and stuff like that. So climate change is really here and now, and everyone knows about climate change. But what's really scary is that, for example, biodiversity, if we don't have pollinators that can actually help in food production, for bees are needed to make food, and if we kill all the bees, we will not get food. So biodiversity is a very serious matter as well, and that not so many talk about yet. And the fact is that if we're not doing anything, then we will be heading toward a world that is not so nice to live in. Maybe it will not be a zombie apocalypse, but it will not be a good world. So my why is really to try to work with sustainability and work with companies who want to make a difference to solve some of these challenges. And I also love people, like I said in the beginning, and HR is one of my favorite functions. Very nice people often, so yeah, even as a finance guy, I'm really into HR as well, and I worked well with my HR business partners in the past. And I believe that HR has a very big role to play in sustainability when it comes to attract talent, when it comes to build a purpose-driven culture that can drive engagement around these topics, when it comes to help people upskill. I mean, if you're a company and you used to have old combustion engines, and now your equipment is running on electricity instead, then all your mechanics need to train in how to work with electric motors instead of combustion engines, for example. So sustainability will require upskilling. Or if your finance department suddenly, it's not only reporting financial data, it's also reporting sustainability data, then you need to upskill these people, and HR can help with that. Also, we will see more and more companies including comp and ben parameter or sustainability parameters in their comp and ben. And then, of course, the CSRD, which is the real topic for this one. That one is also something where HR need to support, and that we will dive into now. So, but what is CS? And I forgot to mention in the beginning, if you have questions, there is a Q&A piece in the right-hand frame. So you can write your questions in there as I speak, and we have a question session in the end. And you can also vote for other people's questions. So we will take them in popularity. So it will be a small popularity contest. So you can upvote your favorite questions, and we'll take them at the end. So please use the right-hand side to ask your questions in the Q&A. So back to CSRD. What is that? Well, CSRD is part of something called the European Green Deal, and that's a lot of legislative packages and ambitions from the European Union. Europe is supposed to be the first climate neutral continent by 2050. And to do that, we need to work with energy, we need to work with the environment and the oceans, we need to work with our agriculture, we need to work with transport, we need to work with industry, we need to work with research and innovation, and city planning, a new European Bauhaus. All of these things require money, a lot of money. Some people estimate the investment gap to reach this net zero continent by 2050 to quarter of or 250 billion to 500 billion euro every year. So that's a lot of money that we need to find somehow. So what the European Union is trying to do is they're trying to drive money towards sustainable solutions through a package called the Sustainable Finance Action Plan. And you can shout at me with some emoji or something if this is too much technical. I mean, no one is lawyer, right? But maybe someone is. But the Sustainable Finance Action Plan, it is a roadmap for directing investments towards sustainable projects. And that in turn includes the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, so that investors can understand what is sustainable. There is also a sustainable financial disclosure regulation where banks and insurance companies and pension funds, they need to report how much of their money they invest in sustainable solutions. And then finally, there is the EU taxonomy, which actually tells us what is sustainable. So the CSRD is part of this European Green Deal. And this was transposed into Swedish law in the end of or mid 2024. So it means that all listed corporations with more than 500 employees, they are now subject to submit a CSRD report. And then there was a roadmap with companies with more than 250 employees being in scope for this year, so starting to report from next year, and then all the listed SMEs in 2026. Well, of course, when you make a lot of changes, you know this as HR people, change management is difficult. And especially when you're the EU and you send heavy legislation onto companies. So there was some backlash, and now something called the omnibus package has been proposed in the EU, meaning that these companies that have more than 250 employees, they will get 2 more years to report. So if you are a company with more than 250 employees, but you're not listed, then you have some more time, but eventually this will maybe hit you as well. And let's see what happens here. But if you're in a listed company with more than 500 employees, then this is already something for you. So what is the CSRD? Well, you could say there are 3 key concepts in the legislative framework. One is to analyze all your stakeholders. And for most companies, one of the most important stakeholders is the people working in the company. So dialogue with all the different stakeholders is one key concept. Another key concept is to understand how your company is affecting your value chain. Maybe you have a very clean business, like driving an electric car. That's a very clean thing to do in your own country. But if you have 9-year-olds in Congo mining the cobalt that you need in the battery, then that's not a very responsible thing to do. So you have to keep control over your value chain. And the third key concept is the double materiality. And that, I think, is a very good framework. And what is that? Well, the double materiality, it says that a company need to assess its business both when it comes to what impact do the company have on the people and the planet, and also how do the people and the planet impact your company when it comes to financials, for example, cash flow or profit and loss or balance sheet. Could be, for example, back to the coffee. If you're a grocer and you sell coffee to the big grocery stores, and this is a commodity that swings a lot in price, then that could mean a financial risk for you. And then you have a financial materiality. And likewise, if you maybe stop selling coffee because it's too expensive, or you buy from another region, then you have actually an impact on the people who are farming coffee in the region where you used to source. So you have to look at these business decisions or business risk from both ends. So how do you impact people and the planet, and how do people and the planet impact your company financially? And if we look at what stakeholders you need to analyze, that what perspective, well, I think if you are a company, it's very difficult to say that you don't have an impact on your workforce. Of course, as an employer, you have an impact on your workforce. And equally, your people have an impact on your financial health. Otherwise, I mean, if the employees were not important to your financial success, then you would not have people, then you would have robots. But so usually, like, people is something that is material both from an impact materiality perspective and from a financial materiality perspective. So people is certainly one of these topics that is in most companies a double materiality. And we can also see that PwC, the big audit firm, they have started to look at large corporations CSRD reports, and they see that people is reported in almost every company that has produced a CSRD report have chosen to have their own workforce as a material topic. It's very difficult to come around, and that's why HR is important in CSRD work. And then you could say, okay, maybe you're not in scope for CSRD, but maybe still you want to, and more than 50% of you guys on this call already have a strategic view on sustainability. And you could say that to map this out, how will sustainability impact different parts of your company? For example, I used to work for a company called StormGeo, and we helped shipping companies reduce carbon emissions. So for us, sustainability was very much a business opportunity. You could also say that you look at where is sustainability positioned in your strategy. Do you have a sustainability strategy, or do you have a corporate strategy where sustainability is part of your corporate strategy, in the core of your corporate strategy? You could also say, which approach do you take to sustainability? Is this something you do when your biggest customer asks you to report, or do you work proactively? And those of you who have good vision, you see that proactive and reactive is mixed around here. I always forget to change that in this slide. And then how you engage with your stakeholders. Maybe you don't engage with them, but maybe you should be more active in your stakeholder engagement. Maybe you need to change the way you develop products and your service offering to be better, to cater for changes. Maybe you're dependent on some strange metal that is very difficult to find, or that you cannot mine in a responsible way. Then maybe you should change the way you design your product so you don't harm people or the environment. And I think the employee engagement is really important. So people with a strategic view on sustainability have a very comprehensive employee engagement plan when it comes to sustainability. And I think this is my statement, but when employees see that their company is making a positive impact, they will feel a sense of pride and purpose. And that, I think, is proven that people with a sense of pride and purpose also deliver better at work, both when it comes to productivity and loyalty. So I think regardless of CSRD or not, if you're a small company, large company, to make this strategic canvas and understand how you position sustainability is a very good exercise to do. And it doesn't need to be difficult either. What are the challenges for companies then? Well, reporting is one challenge, and also to set processes and systems to manage the reporting. And then, like I mentioned before, competence development and training, and setting governance structures. And I was a bit too fast because I was wanting to have you on the second poll here about what do you see is the biggest challenge for you to connect HR to sustainability goals. So I will take a moment with that poll. 8 of you have already answered, and it's very tight, so you can still influence the result on this one. It's on the right-hand side in your screen. Yeah. So this one is evolving, I think, and it seems like the top two favorites here are unclear metrics or KPIs for workforce sustainability and insufficient systems to collect data. Maybe also a lack of integration between HR and sustainability teams on a third position. And I think this is great because I think both these top two, like the unclear metrics and also the insufficient data collection systems, that brings us into how HR analytics can help in this. And I'm, as a finance guy, I mean, I bragged about being a people person before, but now I have to admit, like, I also have a weakness for data and analytics. So HR analytics is really something fun is maybe big enough, but in CSRD there is a topical standard, it's called. It's very dry European legislative prosa, but called the own workforce. And this is what most companies already found as a material topics. And here you have actually 131 data points that the EU EFRAG is the name of the body who writes the standard. They have written what they want you to report on. So there you can find some inspirations on good KPIs to measure. And the objective here is to understand how we impact material sustainability topics when it comes to our own workforce. Things like working conditions, equal opportunities, and other work-related rights. And here I think that a modern HR analytic tool can really support companies in their CSRD work. I have worked myself with both Workday and HiBob and other HR analytics tools, and I really think that helps to create a common language and clarity on what do we need to report, and also better structure. It gives you a real-time data collection. You don't need to send around spreadsheets and debate about is your data right or is my data right, but you have one source to the truth. If you have it with high frequency, like a pulse survey, you can also pick up trends early and discuss the results in the teams. I've worked with several pulse surveys as well, and I think as a manager that really helps as well. It encourages honest feedback, and it can be customized so that you can address specific requirements in the ESRS, CSRD requirements. And it will help you with data-driven decision making for your sustainability goals. And more specifically to CSRD, and now you will see that here it says ESRS. ESRS is the European Sustainability Reporting Standards. So that's the standard that you use to report according to CSRD. So just to give you that extra confusion there as a bonus here on Wednesday afternoon. But here it has several disclosure requirements where the standard says what you should disclose on. And I think we're in an Eletive event, so I have to say something about pulse surveys, but pulse surveys can really help you to describe how do you work with your own workforce, how do you engage with your own workforce. It's a channel, of course, for your workforce to raise concerns. You can also manage workforce related impacts if you pick up data or topics that people respond to in the surveys. And you can also report on accidents and mental health and things like that. So I think pulse survey specifically addresses some of these disclosure requirements that the CSRD is looking for. And this is not just my thinking, it's also proven. Lindab is a very big company, and they perform regular pulse measurements across the whole group, and they use it as well in their CSRD report to answer to some of these workforce related disclosure requirements. So I think this is a really good way to look at how did other companies do it in the past. HR analytics to me is a key enabler in the value-oriented sustainability or agenda. So for those of you, it was 38% on unclear metrics and KPIs and 28% on insufficient data collection systems. Well, I think you're right. I think these are problems, but I also think that those are addressable problem if you invest in your HR analytic infrastructure. And also your CFO will be very happy. Maybe you get a nice friend that you can have a coffee with sometimes. That will be an unofficial poll, like how many you have regularly got coffee with your CFO. But as I said, I have worked really well with my HR business partners on HR analytics and other topics in the past. So I think HR analytics is a key enabler in a value-oriented sustainability agenda because it supports compliance, it offers better quality reporting, it enables data-driven decision making, it facilitates proactive management of the workforce, and it can align your sustainability reporting with strategic objectives. And that's how you set the KPIs. Of course, you want to measure things that are strategic for you. So to finish off, I think the most successful companies find that HR analytics provide a competitive advantage beyond compliance. It gives you insights, it offers strategic decision making, and it fosters a culture where sustainability is part of the everyday business. And with that, I'm into the Q&A session with only 3 minutes to spare. Top level and CSRD, the detailed version? That's a very good question. I should be able to put that on the it was from Denise. Well, I think if we go to if we go back to how the CSRD is structured, just find the right slide. Here you have the ESG. So I think the ESG is actually used as a framework for building CSRD. So EFRAG have looked at the ESG standards when they built CSRD. So you see environment. Here we look at 5 different topics. On the social side, we look at 4 topics. It's own workforce. And then it's those workers in the value chain. So you don't have Congolese 9-year-olds. Then you have the affected communities. What happens if you're the biggest employee or employer in a small city and you decide to close and move, for example? How do you impact? And then it's the consumers and end users. And then the G, that's the business conduct and how you do business. We still have room for, I think, 1 question if someone has a question. Otherwise, I will point you to some resources that I've put together with this session. There is an article in my newsletter, The Fairway Approach, where I discuss more about how HR can support the value-oriented sustainability agenda. Together with these excellent people at Eletive, we have written a white paper about this topic that you just listened to. And there is also a small carousel or moral booster, why HR and sustainability are a perfect match that you can look at. And I will leave you with this one. If you want to follow me at LinkedIn to continue the conversation, you can scan that QR code to the left. And if you want to follow my company page, if you like the newsletter, maybe you want to read more newsletters, then you can follow the company page. I didn't take that photo today, but I just chose my outfit. But you can have one of those in the final 15 seconds, find one error when it comes to the photo. I can put in a small price if someone really quickly write it in in the chat. But thank you so much for listening. I appreciate the interest here in HR and sustainability. It's a dear topic, and I am so happy for every one of you that called in to listen to this session, and I wish you good luck on your onward value-oriented sustainability journey. Thank you so much.